YouTube, how's it going? The Goat House is back, and I got my college football rankings, top 25 here, just before week 6 of college football. Doing this video every single week. We update it every single week, along with our NFL power rankings, recaps, predictions for both college and NFL, and plenty more. So if you can join us for all of that. We do have extra content available on our Patreon, updated mock drafts, put one up on the Patreon already this week, and plenty more content. Link in the description for that. And subscriber goals at 40K by the end of this year. Please help us out by subscribing to the channel. Turn the notifications on. Click the like button. All that would be much appreciated. You can check us out on Twitter as well. But to the power rankings, we'll address the teams that I dropped at the end, but you can see them right there. A couple of them for obvious reasons why they're outside of my top 25. We'll also address at the end the teams that I just missed. But coming in at number 25 is Oklahoma State. Pretty impressive offense. They lost to Texas, and they come in here and beat Kansas State, who you see dropped out of my rankings. Undefeated team was looking pretty good. They didn't have too much problems with them. So an impressive team. And, my problem with the AP rankings and sometimes the college football playoff poll, which hasn't been out yet, obviously, but I'm sure we'll all have problems with it, is a couple things. I think they assume things. They assume, we'll talk more about that as this goes on. I think they assume who's good and who's not, obviously based off a year ago or what's going to happen in the future. I think they kind of predict a little bit, which I don't really agree with. And I think they value who teams lose to a little too much. I know you have to value it a little bit, but a little too much. And then we see I got Baylor coming in at number 24, undefeated team. And I think they value an Oklahoma State-Texas loss more than a Baylor-Iowa State win. That's just an example. One example of how they do this throughout their rankings, and I don't really agree with that. Big win against Iowa State, big time. I know it was close, but big time win for Baylor. They remain undefeated. It's definitely a team to watch out for. I was impressed with their defense in that game, even though Iowa State doesn't have too much offense. But Baylor comes in at number 24 for now. 23 is Michigan, who was 24 last week, so they move up one spot just by teams moving down. And the two teams below them, Oklahoma State and Baylor, were not ranked last week, so they're new to my rankings. So Michigan at 23, big game against Iowa this week, defensive battle. Let's see if they can start to improve. The offense definitely, including Shea Patterson, needs to improve. At number 22, who did not move, is Boise State. Yeah, they're undefeated. The execution really isn't all the way there. I thought that they could play a little better in some of those games. They haven't played the best teams, but it's still a solid team, and they're undefeated. They're at 22 for now for me. Dropping down to 21 from number 13 is Cal. Impressive win over Washington this year, so that kind of keeps them up. And they've been a solid team, solid defense, but they lose to Arizona State, which was a little disappointing in a good game, but they still remain in my top 25 and only one loss and an impressive win in there. I still think an impressive team for a Pac-12 team here. I do like their defense still. Number 20, who didn't move at all, is Wake Forest. Impressive team. I beat some, solid teams. Beating North Carolina means something to me. Being undefeated means something. And the way they're executing on offense and an offensive-driven game here in college football. So they remain at 20. Don't move up or move down at all. Moving down a few spots is Virginia. They were undefeated, and I was impressed with them. And then they play a good Notre Dame team, so they can't get, punished too much for losing to a good team like that. And they did have them at halftime. They were up, so, they can, kind of, even though the final score doesn't say so, they can kind of keep up with these teams. I really like their defense, too. If you watch the game, Notre Dame really struggled. Even though they got going, they really struggled on offense throughout the whole game. So I do like Virginia's defense, and their offense has their moments. Pretty good receiver group there. So they go from 17 to 19, so they actually don't fall too much. And then moving up just one spot is SMU, a valuable win over TCU this year. They're also undefeated, and they're also taking care of their other opponents. It's definitely a sneaky team to watch out for here. Not for the playoff or anything, but to climb a little bit, maybe in this top 25 or to make some noise. At 17, moving up from not ranked in my rankings last week's Arizona State. We talked about them a little bit, how they beat Cal, which was super impressive, and they do have that big win over Michigan State. That was big time. An unfortunate loss against Colorado, but some valuable wins, unlike some of the other teams that have, the easy wins or, a softer schedule. Arizona State deserves some credit, so they actually move up big time, coming up to 17, because on their resume they have beaten two ranked teams, even though maybe I wouldn't. I was in the ballpark of Michigan State, but I think they were 18 at the time. I didn't value that win as much as maybe the AP poll would, but I value the California win more than maybe the AP poll would. So it kind of evens up there. But I like them. That's valuable wins there at 17. Impressive team. At number 16, moving up from 23, is Utah. They lose to USC a week ago. They have some injuries, and they play a good Washington State team, and they beat them. Even with Zach Moss out, it's a good team. Still a good team. That USC loss could be. USC is a good team, but it could have been kind of a fluky thing. Injuries going on in there, and I like the way they played against Washington State. I think they're a good football team. I think they got balance on both sides of the ball. Even though they have a loss, they move up here to 16. At 15, moving up one more spot is Iowa. Not a whole bunch of impressive wins. Iowa State is somewhat impressive. But they're undefeated. Their defense is one of the top defenses in the country, like we expected. And they got Michigan this week, so that's a big game, for obvious reasons. Both teams can move quite a bit for winning that game, really. And at 14, even though they have a loss, they're moving up one spot. Washington, I like this Washington team. I think they're very good. And you see how they played against USC. They dominated that USC team. I think they're very talented on both sides of the ball. That loss is tough, and it's going to sting late in the year if they are not included in the playoff, because I think this team can compete. I think there's a lot of teams ahead of them that they are better than, but because of that loss, they are not ahead of them. They are at 14, but I do like this team. Penn State is moving up one spot. Impressive win over Maryland. I haven't been too impressed with them really all year. A little close at times with teams like Buffalo, but they're really getting going now. That was an impressive win over Maryland, but it's not enough to move them up a whole bunch of spots, just up one spot. But they can continue to get better and climb here. They are sitting at undefeated still, so Penn State team definitely a team to look out for. Texas is at 12. They actually moved down a spot. Nothing they really did. Honestly, it's just another team kind of did a little more to move up ahead of them. This Texas team, though, they beat a good Oklahoma State team. They lost to a very good LSU team. Want to see a little more. I am worried about the defense at times this year after losing a bunch of talent in the draft last year. Coming in at number 11, who also moved down a spot just because, once again, because of another team that just hopped over Oregon and Texas. But I like this Oregon team, very talented. I think they should be better than they actually are. I think they have a lot of talent there. I just want to see them execute. I thought they had Auburn in that game, like I talked about pretty much every week. They'll have their opportunities going forward to get back up there. They have talent on both sides of the ball, like I said. And the team that just hopped over Texas and Oregon is Notre Dame. They have a loss just like those two teams, and an impressive second half against Virginia. And it kind of showed why I really like this Notre Dame team coming in this year. Pass rush. I thought they could have had the best pass rush in football for this season, and we didn't see a whole bunch of it up until that Virginia game, and then it went wild. A guy like Julian Okwara, who was one of the better pass rushers in the nation, was pretty dominant in that game. I know they lost Dalen Hayes, but they still have Khalid Kareem. They got a number of guys that can get after the quarterback, and it's starting to show. Offensively, I do worry about them a little bit at times, but we know they're a very good team. They move up a couple spots here. But I don't understand how they could be ahead of Florida in the AP. Florida's undefeated. I know they had some close games, but it's not like it's the easiest competition. They did have some injuries. I don't really think undefeated Florida should be behind a one-loss Notre Dame team, in my opinion. But Florida, tough task against Auburn this week. Fortunately, they're home, so that could be the difference. But that will shift some things. The outcome of that game will definitely shift some things. So I'm really looking forward to that defensive battle. Florida still has a very good defense. Still at number 8 is Wisconsin. No movement there. Very sloppy game against Northwestern. They got it done at the end. Their defense clutched up. Want a little more on offense. They're going to need a little more on offense when they're getting ready for Ohio State this year. And that's their biggest challenge, obviously, in the Big Ten. I think those are the two best teams in the Big Ten. But Iowa and Michigan could creep back up. And Penn State, of course, who looks to be getting better. So those are the teams to look out for. But they remain at 8. Want to see a little more. This is really, I think there's a big 7. I think there's a clear top 7. And these teams all are obviously the top contenders for the playoff. And I think they're like in their own category. And it's tough having Oklahoma at 7. Had them at 7 last week. It's tough because they're a very good team, very good offense team, very well coached. The offense is getting better and better. Hurts is getting better and better. Just super impressive what he's able to do. Once again, impressed with Lincoln Riley too, and really the weapons on Oklahoma. It's just, the difference between Oklahoma and the 6 teams above them. There's slight differences with this top 7 that are in their own category. It's kind of just body of work. Have they really played anybody that talented? The Houston win at the time seemed a little better than it actually is, and we'll kind of talk more about my stance on previous wins and how valuable they are down the road. But I'll get more into that in a second here. But, I want to see them, 2 things. I want to see them play better teams, execute against better teams, and I want to see them execute on the defensive side. I think some of these other teams really upped their offense from maybe just last year, the last couple of years, and they already had a better defense in Oklahoma. So that could be the difference. I want to see a little more. And then here we go. Coming in at number 6, dropping down from number 1 is the Clemson Tigers. And it's a mixture of things here. They haven't been all that impressive, number 1. They very well, I know they won, a win's a win, but they very well could have lost North Carolina. If North Carolina didn't run that stupid option on the 2-point conversion, I think they could have ran pretty much any play. Then they could have ran it up the middle. They may have gotten it, and North Carolina could have won the game. So that was a disappointing win, I guess. And I know it's tough to see a team drop that much. But then we go back to the 2. I was valuing the Texas A&M win a lot, and why... People could argue, well, Texas A&M was ranked at the time. Maybe Clemson beat them and made them worse, threw their momentum off. And that's a very good argument. So people want to say, the value of that win remains of what it was when it was. But I also look at it how the teams are now, because I think back before Clemson and A&M played, we thought it was a good game. We thought it was a valuable win because we assumed A&M was a good team. We assumed they would kick things off or keep things going from last year. And this applies to any team, not just A&M. But maybe our assumptions were wrong. Maybe that number next to their name and logo in the AP poll, it was just an assumption. It meant nothing. So that win isn't as valuable anymore. And their offense hasn't really been looking too great, honestly. Even in the first game of the year where they dominated Georgia Tech, kind of throwing picks, turned the ball over. It was pretty much Travis Etienne carrying. In the North Carolina win. Kind of that all combined with the 5 teams above them have just looked more impressive. And this being power rankings week by week basis, it made sense for me to drop them to number 6 because the other teams have more impressive wins, more impressive execution, better body of work, kind of like I mentioned. Number 5, staying at number 5, it's tough to have some of these teams look so good and look better and just, stay at the same rank. But Auburn's offense is getting things going week to week. Bo Nix, a true freshman, getting things going. The weapons, they know their offense. The playbook's getting learned, the system's getting learned, and we know their defense is top notch. It was a dominating win over Mississippi State, and we know they should beat Mississippi State, but it was a dominating effort, dominating win. I love this defense. It's a very good team, and they have that good win over Oregon. Even though I did think Oregon outplayed them for most of the game, but Auburn late in the game was clutch, and they won the game. And now they have a big game against Florida, and that could shift things around. But it's tough to pass the top 4 at the same time. Number 4 remaining in the same spot is Georgia, and for Georgia, good team obviously. I just couldn't move them up. I think the 3 teams ahead of them, I think, are just better, honestly. Maybe Georgia's body of work's a little better, beating Notre Dame. Even though I wasn't really thrilled with either team in that game, I was just trying to wait and see who won this game. It wasn't like I like the defense of both teams, but does Georgia have more, as much or more offense than the teams ahead of them? That's where I worry. In an offensive-driven league, I think they can match the defense of those teams. But I want to see some offense. But it's a very good team, a good win over Notre Dame, good win over Vanderbilt, and they'll have some competition going forward. I think they can. I really think they can go undefeated the rest of the year. Auburn is the game I'm looking forward to, and then the SEC championship game will be. I think will end up being their first loss, which could be a win too. We'll have to see when we get there. But that Auburn game will be good later in the year here. But Georgia at number 4. At number 3, moving up from number 6 is Ohio State. I know Nebraska isn't the most appealing opponent, but it was a win in dominating fashion. And like I kind of go back to execution on both sides of the ball. I see it, and I kind of been worried about Ohio State's defense, because last year I kind of screwed them out of some games there. The Purdue game, the Maryland game, which they escaped though. The defense wasn't there, and that's why they didn't belong in the playoff, in my opinion. And I'm pretty sure the college football playoff poll opinion, and on top of having the loss to Purdue. So I still worried about their defense, but they show me they got playmakers. Jeff Okudah is just unreal, and they can stop teams that are, could be offensive threats. Nebraska should be able to put up points. And then they're a darn good offensive team, well-coached team. Execution on both levels, and just dominating fashion. Nebraska on prime time, they should beat them up, but it was just a dominating win. And Justin Fields is playing lights out. It's crazy that the difference between Ohio State and Georgia could be, I guess offense and just I think Justin Fields can do more. It's crazy him coming from Georgia. Not that Georgia didn't, I think they made the right decision. You can't really change things there. And Fromm's an excellent quarterback, but it's crazy to think about if they were to play head to head. That would be wild, absolutely wild. And then no change at 2. I like this LSU team. I don't like where they're at in the AP at number 5. This team's proven that they have an elite offense right now. They have absolute elite offense, elite quarterback in college football, and elite playmakers. The receiver unit's great. They can score on anybody. They put up big points against Texas, even though that game seemed close. I was confident with LSU the whole time. I think they can score with anybody, and their defense has been giving up some points. I know there's a lot of garbage points for Vanderbilt. But they have playmakers. They'll have playmakers in big games that'll make that extra play. So I think they can play on both sides of the ball, but in an offensive-driven league, they have one of the best offenses in the country, and it's crazy to think about they could have the top one. Absolutely wild. This LSU team's been super impressive to me. I think that they have what it takes down the line, but again, this isn't predictions. They just been impressive. So they stay at 2. And then going from 3 to 1 is just Alabama, and I still want to see them play more team, better teams, kind of like the other teams, but they're just dominant. Both sides of the ball, execution on both sides of the ball. And there's no doubt, there's kind of assuming, teams like Ohio State, if they play better teams, we can sit here and assume they'll take care of them. And we're confident they'll take care of them. Teams like Oklahoma, they haven't played the best teams. We're confident they can take care of teams when they play them, like Texas, maybe, even though they struggled with them last year. That's assumptions. And you could argue it's the same thing with Alabama. You're just assuming, but we're all pretty damn confident when they play these other teams. LSU is a different situation because that's 1 versus 2. But when they play a little better competition, they're just going to be, just fine. So they're at 1, dominating on both sides of the ball. They look like the best team in the country, so I have to put them at number 1. But like I said, I think that top 7, separates themselves. You can talk about, man, if I did rankings, that'd be pretty interesting too. If I did rankings, just take away the record, who they played, who are the best teams. Yeah, like I said, those 7 are clearly the best. If I want to throw other teams that can compete in there, Oregon, based off their talent, really should. We saw them compete with Auburn, so I think Oregon would probably be that 8th team. I don't know if Notre Dame has the offense, even though they competed with Georgia, so possibly them. Too. I'm looking forward to Penn State. They were disappointing, and we'll show these just missed teams too, but they were disappointing early, but they're starting to heat up. So that's a team that can really sneak up there. And I really like that Washington team. Like I said, I think they can beat several teams ahead of them. I think they can beat pretty much everybody ahead of them up until that top 7. I think the top 7 will give them problems. But there's the just missed Memphis, undefeated. I want to see them play a little more. UCF, I can't put them in there because that Pitt loss is tough for me, but pretty close. A&M, I had drop, even though they won. Sloppy game against Arkansas. They're down to their second string quarterback too, and they're just disappointing. A&M's a very, I guess, disappointing team for me. I thought I had high hopes. They lost their stud tight end who had a lot of high hopes before the year started, but I expected more. And then Michigan State just missed, not too many impressive wins, and then or at all really, and then they lost to Arizona State. And then USC, I think, take away the record and take away who they played and everything. I think USC is easily a top 25 team. Just 2 losses is tough there. And then Kansas State dropped because no valuable wins and a tough loss against Oklahoma State. But those are teams that look out to get back in there. But that looks like it's going to do it for my college football power rankings. Like I said, we do this for NFL too. Also make college football picks. That's already on the channel. I make NFL picks. We do score predictions, plenty more, recaps, all kinds of stuff. We got you covered for football season and even in the off season here. Our Patreon has mock drafts up until draft season, and then the mock drafts will be here in video form like always. But that's going to do it for this one. Thanks everyone for watching. Goodbye.